The Kansas City Royals, the other baseball team in the state of Missouri. The Royals have met their cross-state rival, the St. Louis Cardinals, in the World Series once. And in that series, a controversial call took place which altered the series. Today we're going to look at the call and find out whose fault it really is. Play the intro. It's hard to compare the Kansas City Royals to the St. Louis Cardinals. Spoiler alert, it's lopsided in favor of the Cardinals. The Cardinals have 19 pennants. The Royals only have 4. The Cardinals have 11 World Series titles. The Royals only have 2. The Cardinals own the Royals in the all-time regular season series. Despite playing each other 4 times a year, there is some sense of rivalry between these two Missouri-based teams. And it would make sense to figure out where these teams came from. I mentioned the origin of the Cardinals before, so I'll recap it quickly. St. Louis was founded in the 1800s, went through the names Brown Stockings Browns and Perfectos, settled on Cardinals, shared St. Louis with the American League Browns, and forced them to move to Baltimore. The Cardinals have been St. Louis's baseball team for more than a century. Now with the Royals, their reason for existence is interesting. Following the Kansas City Athletics moving to Oakland, Missouri Senator Stuart Symington threatened to sue Major League Baseball and revoke a certain rule. MLB had no choice but to award an expansion team to Kansas City, which became the Royals, and also caused the Seattle Pilots to flame out in one season, but we don't talk about that. These two teams are separated by 250 miles, and the first meeting between these two is quite memorable, but for the wrong reason. The 1985 World Series between the National League champion St. Louis Cardinals and the American League champion Kansas City Royals. The Cardinals were a few years removed from a World Series win in 1982 over the Brewers. The Royals made their first World Series appearance in 5 years after being thumped by the Phillies in 1980. But before we go over what happened, I think some extra information is necessary. The 1985 postseason was innovative for one main reason. The championship series was extended to 7 games, instead of 5. Remember that. In the National League, the Cardinals matched up with the Los Angeles Dodgers, while in the American League, the Royals were up against the Toronto Blue Jays. Let's start with the ALCS first. The 99-win Blue Jays were expected to crush the 91-win Royals. The Blue Jays went up 2-0 and 3-1 in the series. In 1984, the series would be over and Toronto would be going to the World Series. But they had one more game to win. Why? Remember when I said they expanded the championship series to 7 games? It benefited the Royals. Kansas City rattled off 3 straight wins, 1 in KC and 2 in Toronto, to advance to the World Series for the first time in 5 years. Meanwhile, in the NLCS, the 100-win Cardinals were dealing with the 95-win Dodgers. The Dodgers obliterated the Cardinals in the first 2 games in LA. The Cardinals took the next 2 in St. Louis to even the series. While the Cardinals were able to tie the series at 2 games each, they lost an important piece. In Game 4, it rained, so the tarp came onto the field. Only thing is, in the 80s, a machine put the tarp onto the field, and it hurt the Cardinals. Vince Coleman, the rookie left fielder known for stealing bases, slipped on the AstroTurf. As he was on the ground, the tarp machine went over his foot. The Cardinals were able to get him out, but that wasn't the end of the bad news. The tarp caused one of Coleman's bones to be detached. Coleman was in pain and wouldn't be able to play. Despite losing their emerging rookie, the Cardinals trudged on. In Game 5, the score was tied 2-2 in the bottom of the 9th when Ozzie Smith sent a ball over the fence of Busch Stadium 2 for a walk-off winner. The Cardinals had taken the lead in the series. Unlike last year's format, the Cardinals had to go back to LA for Game 6 and a potential Game 7. With their back to the wall, the Dodgers had a 5-4 lead in the top of the 9th and needed only one more out to force a Game 7. With a 1-1 count and 2 runners on, Jack Clark launched a back-breaking 3-run homer into the seats of Dodger Stadium. The Cardinals would go on to win this game 7-5 and the series. Unlike the Royals, who came back from a 3-1 deficit, the Cardinals wouldn't have benefited from the expanded series. Now the World Series was set. The Interstate 70 showdown between the Cardinals and the Royals. Game 1 from Royal Stadium in Kansas City. Despite scoring the first run in the second inning, the Royals' offense dried up. The Cardinals knocked in 3 runs and took the first game 3-1. In Game 2, the Royals were up 2-0 in the top of the 9th. The Cardinals were down to their final strike when Jack Clark singled, bringing Willie McGee home. The Royals led 2-1 and still had to get one out. After a double and an intentional walk, and being down to their final out once again, Terry Pendleton hit a bases clearing double, putting 3 runs on the board for the Cardinals and giving them a 4-2 lead. Kansas City went silent in the bottom half, giving St. Louis a 2-0 series lead. Now the series shifted to St. Louis. In Game 3, the Royals pounced for 4 runs. The Cardinals would get one, but the Royals would add 2 more to take Game 3 6-1 and cut the series deficit to 2-1. In Game 4, the Cardinals put 3 runs on the scoreboard. That might be a narrow amount, but thanks to pitcher John Tudor shutting down the Royals' bats in a complete game shutout, the Cardinals took a 3-1 series lead. The Cardinals were one win away from another World Series win. In Game 5, the Royals needed a win to stay alive. With the score tied 1-1 in the top of the second, Willie Wilson hit a bases-clearing triple to give Kansas City a 4-1 lead. KC would tack 2 more runs up to the score sheet, and St. Louis would go dry in the batter's box. The Royals had narrowed the series deficit to a 3-2 Cardinals lead in the series. From east to west, the series went back to Kansas City. Similar to the ALCS against the Blue Jays, the Royals needed to win another game to force a Game 7. The game would be scoreless until the top of the 8th when Brian Harper brought home Terry Pendleton. The Cardinals went into the 9th up 1-0, needing 3 outs to win the World Series. The first Royals batter, George Orta, hit a slow roller. Clark tossed the ball to pitcher Todd Worrell, who touched the bag before Orta made it, then tripped. Should be the first out, right? Wrong. Umpire Don Denkinger called Orta safe. But why? Did he favor the Royals? Not exactly. Here's why he called Orta safe. Denkinger was waiting to hear the ball land in Worrell's glove while watching the base for Orta's foot. But due to the crowd noise in Royal Stadium, he never heard the ball touch Worrell's glove and ruled Orta safe. After the missed call, the Cardinals' confidence fell apart. The Royals pounced with more runners. St. Louis got one out, but Kansas City had runners on first and second. Dane Iorg, a former Cardinal now playing for the Royals, sent a bloop into right field. 1 run scored, tying the game. Right fielder Andy Van Slyke threw directly at catcher Dale Porter, but Jim Sundberg slid home safely. The Royals had won Game 6 and forced a Game 7. The Cardinals, who had champagne ready in the clubhouse, were infuriated. So with that call, you think the Cardinals would play with fire in their eyes. But that wasn't the case. The so-called fire turned into a flameout. St. Louis self-destructed while Kansas City steamrolled them for 9 innings. It was a massacre by the 3rd inning. The Royals would keep the Cardinals scoreless. Cardinals manager Whitey Herzog had enough. As he was ejected from the game, he barked at Denkinger saying, "We wouldn't even be here if you hadn't missed the call last night." Denkinger countered by saying, "Well, if you guys weren't hitting 120 in this World Series, we wouldn't be here." Remember what Denkinger said. It's important later. With an 11-0 blowout win and erasing a 3-1 series deficit for the second time this postseason, the Royals won the World Series for the first time in franchise history. So who do you blame for the Cardinals losing the series? It's obviously Denkinger's fault, right? Not entirely. Yes, Denkinger made the wrong call and his positioning wasn't the best, but this was preventable. Remember when Denkinger said the Cardinals were hitting 120 in this series? That was kind of an exaggeration. St. Louis finished with a batting average of 185, one of the lowest in World Series history. In 7 games, the Cardinals scored a combined total of 13 runs. In 3 games, they only scored 1 run. The biggest factor that caused the Cardinals to lose this series? Why didn't they finish the job in Game 5? The main takeaway? If the Cardinals win Game 5, all of this doesn't happen. Following their first World Series title, the Royals would collapse. Oh, they had Bo Jackson? Great, that changed nothing. The Royals wouldn't make the playoffs for 29 years until 2014, when they made a run to the World Series, where they were edged by the Giants. The Royals would win the World Series over the Mets the next season. Today, the Royals are terrible, deep in the middle of a rebuild with only 2 or 3 legitimate pieces. It's going to be a long time before the Kansas City Royals are relevant again. Check back in 2045. On the other side of the state, the Cardinals have fared differently. St. Louis made the World Series a few years later, but lost in 7 games to the Twins. The Cardinals wouldn't make the World Series until 2004, where they were swept by the Red Sox. The Cardinals have won a pair of World Series titles, which they did in 2006 and 2011. Today, I have no idea what the Cardinals are doing. Last season was a disaster, and management believes that with a few pitchers, they can still compete with the current core. Don't ask about a rebuild, that isn't happening. It's hard to tell if the Cardinals will make the World Series or fall apart again. While both teams have gone separate paths, there is the question if both teams will meet in the World Series again. With the way both teams are going, it's kinda unlikely. If the two Missouri teams do meet in the Fall Classic again, hopefully a bad call doesn't ruin it again. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed, like, subscribe, and ring the bell. If I get to 500 subscribers before December 27th, I'll do a Q&A for my birthday. I'll see you in the next video.